All right, here we go. So, who would like to volunteer and introduce themselves this morning, or you can be voluntold?
And Nick's on the line.
Excellent. Hannah,
Okay.
why don't you go ahead?
I'm Hannah. I graduated from CU in Boulder in December of this past year. I've gone to the Boulder 1 Million Cups just a couple times, so I'm glad to be here with all of you. And yeah, I'm excited to see the pitches.
Fantastic. And do you have your own company yet, Hannah?
I worked on a company for a year in my last year of school, and then I'm currently working with a startup consulting company where we're focusing on helping other startups kind of get off the ground.
Fantastic. All right. Jim, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jim Sears. I'm one of the organizers for the Boulder 1 Million Cups. And so we're glad to be here. These are thin times in coronavirus times, and so it's great that we have Zoom to bring different groups together so easily. I'd like to see it happen more, maybe even with groups outside Colorado. Somehow we find a way to collaborate.
Fantastic. And I need one more. Who else wants to introduce themselves?
I'll go.
Great,
I'm
Peter.
John Kagor, another import from the Boulder Million Cups, and I've been going for a while. We are starting up a startup in Boulder doing augmented reality for, unfortunately in these times, physically co-located spaces. So once COVID passes, hopefully we'll have a little better luck.
Great. And John, what's the name of that company?
Right now it's called Artemix, but we're working on a better name.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. So welcome to those who came in late. Make sure you have your participant box open so you can raise hands for questions coming forward. And then do we have any general announcements, events going on in the community that people need to know about? Katrina.
Hey there. It's about that time of the month where I'm promoting my creative mastermind. It is small group coaching with both creatives and entrepreneurs. And what's really cool about it is that if you got a new idea, either your business is changing, you want to put out a book, you got a podcast you're thinking about, or a class, it's a great place to workshop something like that. But it also helps people build community and really get connected with each other to sort of create in a new way. I mean, let's face it, we kind of all need to do that right now. I did put some of the information in the Facebook or on the Facebook page. So if people are interested, they can check it out there, or they can go to my website, creativekatrina.com.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jen, your announcement?
Yes, I am having, along with NoCO Pet Pack, NoCO Pet Summit the end of June. I'll have more information for you guys next week to try and help bring business into our brick and mortar pet businesses. So.
Fantastic. All right. Any other announcements before we get started? All right, I have the last one. For those of you who are not familiar, we do at Launch NoCO host a number of get-togethers to keep the entrepreneurial community close and connected. And tomorrow night we have our weekly Sips and Tips happy hour. So that is happening through Zoom. It's at 4:30 tomorrow. You can find that information on our meetup page. But it's an opportunity to connect with other business owners, have a little bit of fun, and get a tip that's immediately applicable to your business, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It's mostly a good connecting time to have that moment. Ozzy, I'm going to hit you last real quick before we get started with Adam.
Yeah, just really quickly, just feedback. Increasingly, I've been meeting with small groups of people in person. We go out to either parks or we go to other places and we get to talk and everything else. There's a lot less fear going on now than there was before. And one of the good things about it is that you do get that social connection. I find it just very stimulating to actually be physically in the same space, more or less, with people. So anyway, it's just something to keep in mind as somewhere along the line, we're going to have to transition to stop being so much the Zoom mites and back to being human. So just feedback.
I will look forward to such a day. The other piece that we've been talking about with the 1 Million Cups organizing team and some of the folks on Launch NoCo is when it would be appropriate for us to do that. And at the moment, because of the size of our group and the inability to find a space where social distancing is possible inside that space, we're going to continue to keep going at least through June on Zoom, and then we'll reevaluate with both where space considerations may be as well as community considerations. So we'll keep moving forward in that way. But I want to get us into our first presenter so we have time to get both of those going. And I want to introduce Adam Melnick, who is a professor of entrepreneurship and talking with us today about the Colorado Lending Sources Ice House project and courses. And our fun fact about Adam is that in 2003, he was at the Australian National Championships for Ultimate Frisbee. So Adam, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And does that look okay for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, we gotta go into presenter mode.
Details.
Details. Okay. All right, let me get all of your beautiful faces out of the way. Okay. All right, so should I go ahead and get started then?
Please.
All right. So my name is Adam Melnick, and I am here to speak with you all today about Colorado Lending Sources Ice House Entrepreneur Development Program. And so my asks for you today are, what advice do you have for us about marketing this thing? Typically, we did this through in-person networking, and obviously, as we just discussed, that's no longer an option. Do you know any entrepreneurs who'd like to be a guest entrepreneur to share their story with our participants? And what changes would you make to the program as a result of the circumstances we currently find ourselves in? And I'll add a little context to that last question as we go through. But by way of introduction, again, my name is Adam Melnick. I'm an entrepreneurship instructor at Metropolitan State University of Denver. For the last 6 years, I worked with Colorado Lending Source in a variety of roles, mostly doing entrepreneur development. I was in-house counsel, I did community relations, all sorts of stuff. That's how I got involved in Ice House. And I'm not gonna say too much about why I love Ice House, except to say that teaching this class has easily been the most professionally rewarding thing that I have done in my career. I've seen how it changed my own life and the lives of many of my participants. And for that reason, I just feel incredibly passionately about the concepts that we're gonna discuss very briefly today. So what exactly is Ice House? It is a 10-week-long program. You get 2 to 3 hours per week of online content that was developed by an organization called the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. That's basically interviews with entrepreneurs talking about the concepts, and that's where the content for this class is really delivered. Then you have 2 hours per week in class with me. It's a facilitation adult learner model where you're actually digging deep into the information that you learned about online before you came into class. We read a book called Who Owns the Ice House, which I'll mention again here in a second. We bring in guest entrepreneurs just to share the story of their entrepreneurial journey with our participants. We go through what's called the Opportunity Discovery Canvas process, and I'll talk about that here in a couple minutes as well. And then the final project that we have our participants work on is a vision statement. We ask you to prepare at graduation a plan for what you vision for yourself, what you vision for your business, and how you plan to get there. So the big idea here is that Ice House is based on the idea that we all have a mindset. It's all that stuff that's rattling around in the back of your brain that influences how you think and act. And what ELI did was they interviewed several hundred entrepreneurs, and they pulled out 8 characteristics of that entrepreneurial mindset that they found to be consistent across those successful entrepreneurs. Those are things like really successful entrepreneurs realize that how you respond to your circumstances is much more important than the circumstances that you find yourself in. They see problems as opportunities instead of obstacles. They actually take steps to turn their ideas into action. They're insatiable learners. They have tons of curiosity. They're constantly learning about both the subject matter of their business and how to be a better business owner. They're using their business to create wealth, not just generate revenue. And for those of you who are business owners, I'm sure you know what the difference for that is. We talk about how you have to do what you say you're going to do in order to be a successful business. That's building your brand. Successful entrepreneurs tend to create community, what you're all doing here. They find people to help uplift them and be successful. And they have that grit and internal fortitude to power through the difficult times which every entrepreneurial journey is going to experience. So each week we talk about one of those lessons, and then we actually do something to start implementing that lesson into the lives of our participants right there in class. The other side of this is that we help people to validate business ideas through what's called the Opportunity Discovery Canvas process. So first we ask people to focus on the problem that they're planning on solving. Who has it? How are they currently solving the problem? Then you go out and you interview 10-ish people, make sure that that problem actually exists for them as customers. You come back in, you take notes, you think through what you want your potential solution to be, then you go out and you interview a bunch more people, validate that that solution actually is going to work, come back into the classroom, think through some of the more nuts and bolts pieces of your business. How are you going to market? How are people actually going to pay for your product or service? You know, subscription, point of sale, whatever it is. You conduct another set of interviews. And so by the end of the 10 weeks, you've interviewed probably between 30 and 50 people, and you have a really good sense of whether the business idea that you want to start is really viable. And so this is one of the pieces where I could really use your input on when we can't get out of the building to interview people, how can we do this kind of remotely? So again, we read this book called Who Owns the Ice House? It tells the story of an African-American guy who grew up in the segregated South in the 1950s. He started an ice house. He parlayed that into several other businesses. And the idea from the book is if a gentleman under those circumstances can create a successful business, imagine what we all can do today. As far as who should participate, I think this class is really great for aspiring business owners, people that have an idea for a business or a problem that they want to solve but don't really know where to get started. And it's also really great for existing business owners who are either feeling stagnant or they don't really know what to do next, or they have a new idea for a product or service that their business can launch and they want to spend some time evaluating that before they put the resources into actually launching that product or service. And just to give you a quick sense of a couple of the businesses from both ends of those spectrum that we've worked with. There's Zach, the baker there on the right. He's the owner of Rebel Bread. He came into class knowing that he wanted to start a bakery, but having no idea how to do that. He spent a bunch of time testing his bread recipes, working with different coffee shops. And at the end of the 10 weeks, he launched his business. Last year, he was serving pastries to 16 coffee shops across the Denver metro region and converted his business to an at-home bread delivery service in light of the coronavirus situation. That's Marielle on the left. She's a jeweler. She had a very successful custom jewelry business, and she really used the class to hone in on what the problem she was solving for her customers was, really narrow that focus down, and actually used the materials to train her employees to think more entrepreneurially, which allowed her to do more working on the business and less working in the business. So we've got our next session coming up on July 8th. Again, it'll run for 10 weeks. It goes in the evenings from Wednesday evenings from 5:45 to 7:45. It's going to be Zoom. I had to convert all my university classes to online, so I feel pretty facile with that. But you know, that's going to be a little bit of a new experience. Again, my asks for you are: how do I market this thing? Would you or do you know any entrepreneurs who would like to be a guest participant in the class? And how can I help people do those interviews, gather feedback about their businesses in light of the fact that they can't really get out and do in-person interviews? So with that, I think my time is up. Thank you so much for listening. I can't wait to answer your questions and hear your feedback. And I think I'm supposed to stop sharing my screen now. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Adam. You were at 6 minutes and 30 seconds, so well done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Appreciate that as well. All right, so looking for feedback. We've got raise your hand in the participant box if you have comments, questions, or feedback. I think my first question for you, Adam, in the scope of who is the ideal entrepreneurial client for this particular program? I know you mentioned it's that you've worked with folks who have nothing but an idea, but really in the best sense of it, who's the right person for the program?
Yeah, so to me, this really falls at two ends of the spectrum. The perfect person, there's two types of perfect people. One is that individual who has an idea for a business and they just don't know where to get started. Either they're afraid, they just have no experience and they think they have this great idea but don't want to spend a lot of resources without first validating it, and they don't know how to do that. So that's really the aspiring entrepreneur contingent. And then the other end of the spectrum is that existing business owner. You're probably pretty well established at this point, and you're either kind of getting bored or you're stagnant, and you're looking to either get reinvigorated and think more creatively about your business, or you're looking to roll out a new product or service. And between the mindset piece of it and the idea validation piece of it, both of those categories of people I've seen really served by going through the program. And then one other group that I didn't mention was this is also really good for employees who want to bring a more entrepreneurial mindset to their jobs. We've seen a few people be really successful with that too.
All right, that is a broad scope of folks. All right.
It is really broad. The only people that are not a great fit are people who are, you've launched your business and you're in that super growth phase and you are just working on your business, 50, 60, 80 hours a week, whatever it is. You've already validated your business idea. You probably don't need to go through this class right now. Once you get a little bit more stable, then you would come through.
Great. All right. Ozzy?
And listening in over the past couple of months, I've been going out and talking to small businesses, trying to help them as best I can. And one of the things that comes out is something we knew before, which is that small business people in particular, they tend to understand their business more instinctively and implicitly. They oftentimes don't understand the real structure behind the business, what we call the business model. And you can usually get away with that during a normal economy. The problem with using that approach today is that when things happen, for example, let's say that we had a certain hotspot of COVID again in September. All of a sudden, the government goes back in, the health department and everything else, and they start kicking out new rules and all things. Well, you need to be able to understand structurally what parts of the business is going to be affected and the things that you need to be able to do. Among them, any of your revenue streams are going to be affected. What about your cost structure? So you need to be able to analyze things. This not only helps you, but it also helps you communicate with local governments, which may unintentionally be coming up with requirements that could really sink your business. Anyways, this is one of the areas that I think is missing when you're talking to the small entrepreneurial programs. They normally talk about their ideas and their marketing and their concepts and their energy, but we live in very different times, and you brought that out. And I think we need to be able to analyze things a little better than we used to. So that's one feedback that I would give you.
I think that that's right. And that's an interesting distinction that you brought out. Part of the reason that Colorado Lending Source created this class is because they were operating under the belief that there is pretty good resources out there. I'm not as familiar with the Fort Collins community, but down here we have MICASA, we've got the Denver Metro SBDC, we've got really great resources for the technical skills of running a business. And there weren't great resources for the more sort of, how do you think about your business? How do you own being a successful entrepreneur? And so you're right, this class is much more focused on the thinking, the mindset. It's more of a personal development class specifically for entrepreneurs than it is focused on those nuts and bolts of actually running the business. So you're totally right about that. But that happens to be something that is almost sort of specifically excluded from this curriculum because it's not really what the focus is. But I think you're right that there are there's important technical skills there that need to be learned. But I will just add that I think Zach from Rebel Bread is a great example of how the mindset piece of this is so important, right? This is a guy who was serving 16, 17 coffee shops with pastries across the Denver metro region. They all canceled all of their accounts on the same day when the businesses got shut down. And so over the course of 3 days, he converted his business to an at-home bread delivery service. That's the seeing problems as opportunities piece of this mindset, which I think is part of what you're talking about. And so I think both of those things go hand in hand. You've got to have the mindset to not be like, throw your hands up and give up and try to identify new problems that you can solve. And you have to have the technical skills to be able to implement on that.
All right. Thank you, Ozzy. Hannah, your feedback or question?
Yeah, I mentored a class at CU this past semester. So they also were a group that had to transition into doing everything online. It was an entrepreneurship class where they came in with an idea and then kind of went through a similar process, though, you know, over a longer course of time and perhaps a bit more in depth because of the class, but they did the same structure of validation and testing solutions and that kind of thing. One thing that I suggested to them and saw work well was once they had a solution was just to create a very simple landing page and have an option for people to come to that page and click a buy now button, even though their product or service doesn't exist yet, just to start seeing how many people click. Can we get people to sign up? And, you know, the page can take them to a different page that says product, you know, will be available soon. So give us your email and we'll let you know when it is available. And that also gave them ways to start building up a potential client list for when they did launch, which some of them did. And then they had those people and they immediately were able to go and say, okay, we have our product now. Are you still willing to spend X amount on it, and then get clients that way? So that's potentially a second stage. You know, there's still that first stage of validating the problem, but that was a way that I saw validating the solution to work well.
I think that's a great idea. And we've always struggled a little bit with like, what do you do after you graduate? So I think that handing people this idea of, all right, you validated your solution. If you haven't had time to do this during the class, here's a great next step. Throw up that landing page and see what you can do. I think that is an awesome suggestion. Do you happen to remember what resource you used for creating the landing pages?
People use a whole wide variety, whether it be Wix or Squarespace or WordPress, because the landing page is pretty simple. All of those are pretty easy to, you know, use for people who don't have website experience.
Got it. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
Great. Harrison?
Yeah, I'm going to address the marketing aspect. I think the timing right now with what's going on with Black Lives Matter and the fact that you have a book about an African American who had economic freedom come out of, you know, a really rough period of time. I think this is something where you could do some news releases and get some coverage using that tie-in as a way to help solve some of the problems moving forward. You know, if we have a marginalized group of people getting economic freedom, we're empowering them. And I just think that's something that you could basically hitchhike onto top of mind in the news and get some exposure to what you're doing.
That's a terrific idea. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Harrison. Katrina?
Hey there, Adam. I just wanted to say that I really love what you're putting together here because I think it provides structure for people that need that structured end. And at the same time, reminding people we're full humans. We need to have the mindset. We need to have that personal development and growth so that we're full entrepreneurs and we can kind of show up in that way. As far as to your specific asks, I do think that there are different ways to look at this because your audience is quite broad. I think that does create a space where maybe you're going to rely a little bit more on the features to promote the class. It's like, hey, if you want to get feedback where you're going to get really clear insights on whether this will work for you or not before you get started, why don't you kind of take that angle? Just because I do think a large part of what stops people is fear. And if they knew they had some information that they could use to say, okay, I believe in myself and I think my idea actually has legs, those two things together can be really helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. As far as your first comment goes, for those of you guys who know Carl Dierschow up there, I spent a lot of time working with him on the Conscious Capitalism chapter down here in Denver. So that is something that is very near and dear to my heart, that whole human sort of piece of this. So I think you're absolutely right about that. And then, yeah, as far as marketing is with the features goes, we've tried all sorts of different ties to try to get folks to understand the value of this. And I think that that's another really interesting approach for it. So thank you for that feedback too.
Sure.
Yeah. Denny had a quick question in the chat. Do participants of the Ice House program get priority for a loan consideration with the Colorado Lending Source?
Good question. So the answer to that is it depends. So Colorado Lending Source has a number of different loan programs, one of which is called the Colorado Main Street program, which is their character-based loan program. That's a loan program for between, forgive me, it's been a long time since I thought about this, between $5,000 and $50,000. And so since that is a character-based loan program, if you had gone through the Ice House program, that is one of the things that they would take into account in evaluating whether they would make that loan to you based on your character. You've shown the ability to go through the class, you've shown the work, all of that stuff. But for the other programs, no, that there's no tie between Ice House and the loan program. I get that question a lot. Ice House was really a economic development activity, not a core supporting the loan program piece of it. And then I'll just also mention quickly, I see that in the chat box, it's $250 if you show up, if you sign up before June 19th, and then it's $350 if you sign up after June 19th. So there's a little bit of a price break if you sign up ahead of time.
Great. I know Jim has probably our semi to the last bit of feedback here. So.
Well, more, it was a question. So you talked about using the business model canvas, which is a really powerful tool. And I'm wondering, before the COVID, before Zoom, how you were working using that tool with your students and how you're planning on adapting that to Zoom.
Yeah, so let me be careful about that because we don't use, there is a canvas out there called the Business Model Generation Canvas, which I think is what you're referring to, which is not the canvas we use. We use a simplified version of that canvas that the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative has called the Opportunity Discovery Canvas. And it's prior to the Business Model Generation Canvas. And so our canvas is really focused on problem, solution, and then interacting with your customers. And so our canvas is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Who has that problem? How are they solving it now? Go out and find some potential customers and ask them questions to validate that what you think about those 3 questions is true. Then you focus on the solution. So what's your proposed solution? How is it different from what's being offered currently? And why would people pay for your proposed solution? Go out and ask 10 plus potential customers questions to validate that. Come back into the class and think through the results that you got from that. And then you answer questions around how are people going to find out about it? How are they going to pay for it? And then you do interviews around that too. And I'll just mention that in the parlance of this class, those are what's called assumptions. And assumptions are anything that you can kind of go out there and test. And so what we try to do is help people to convert their beliefs, things that we take as true, but don't even really consider that they might not be, into assumptions so that you can turn them into experiments, which allows you to then get the feedback to validate it.
So my question was around how you do it on Zoom. Do each of the students see other people's canvas? Is there some interaction that you do on Zoom that will be able to make this work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I haven't done this on Zoom before, so I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go. My plan is to use the Zoom breakout rooms to basically split them into groups and have them work on each of their individual canvases in small groups, give feedback, and then report that back out to the larger group. Typically, the way this works is it depends a little bit on class size. I've had classes as small as 6, and in that case, we can all talk about everything together. And I've had classes as large as 14 or 15. And in that case, I tend to break them into the 4 or 5 person small groups, have them work through things together with me circulating as a facilitator, helping them to make sure that they understand what they're actually working on and move those ideas forward. And I think that using Zoom, it's actually not that much different to put them in the small groups. And with the breakout rooms, I, as the facilitator, can hop into one, chat with them for a few minutes, hop into the next, chat with them for a few minutes, and then get everybody back together to share whatever learning has come out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
We're all learning new and exciting things about how to use technology every day.
We sure are.
My last wrap-up thought for you, Adam, before we move on to our second presenter, Nick, that's your 1-minute warning, is to, one of the things I think you can do as the leader and facilitator of this class is to build relationships with groups like this. You have a couple of 1 Million Cups organizers actually here. There are folks in Denver. There's the Commons on Champa. We have the Launch NoCo network. There are newsletters that go out for all of those things. As they're looking to do customer in discovery and interviews, get that information out to us, because then we can disseminate it. And I know every day entrepreneurs are willing to help entrepreneurs. And we're certainly all aware of how much we needed help in the very beginning in terms of testing those assumptions you mentioned. So I think if you reach out to the groups like this with that information a couple of times, we'll be able to disseminate it, and you'll get back some folks who will happily contact your students and take their time and their surveys and those kinds of things. I think that the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Colorado is healthier and more robust than it tends to be in other places. And so merely it's a matter of asking and providing an entryway. And I think you'll see some of that happen.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. My experience is that Colorado is the best place in the country to start a business because of the entrepreneurial community that we have. And it had not occurred to me to use that resource as a way to help them do their customer interviews. I've reached out to those groups as resources in a lot of other ways, but that's a fantastic piece of feedback. So thank you for that. I definitely will do that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Adam. Very happy to have had you today. Appreciate that. And as always, we love having folks from Colorado Lending Source and others present with us. So thank you. I want to introduce our second presenter, who is Nick Armstrong. Some of us up here in Fort Collins know him as the owner of WTF Marketing, which stands for exactly what you think it stands for, and the organizer of this past Fort Collins Startup Week, and the 7-year organizer and founder of Fort Collins Comic-Con. Do I have the number right there, Nick?
It's close. I think it's, let me count the posters. We had 5, so this would be our 6th year.
Fantastic. Okay. And because I've known Nick for a really long time, I will tell you my favorite fun fact about Nick is the fact that he speaks Klingon and used it to woo his wife.
Accurate.
So
we actually also we spoke our vows. Our presiding official was speaking in Klingon, so that was an interesting. And Duolingo, if you're interested in learning, Duolingo has an entire course on Klingon, so you too can have the joys of spitting on other people once COVID is over.
I had no idea that she spoke Klingon as well. Wow. Okay.
It's just, just slightly.
All
okay.
right. The nerd is strong in your household. So Nick, if you will share your screen and take it away, we'll get started with your presentation.
Certainly. Okay. So can you see this slide?
Yes.
Deck? Okay. So, number one, I hate slide decks. It's just abhorrent to me to have to put one together. So bear with me on this. But this is where we're going to go. So what I'm going to say is the doing is the thing. The talking, the worrying, and the thinking is not the thing. And that's from Amy Poehler from Yes Please. If you haven't read this book, it's a really good understanding of how complex and convoluted a lot of interactions with customers can become. And the way that Amy Poehler puts thoughts into words is really effective. So in terms of what business owners and what customers are feeling today, the dynamics are really pretty well explained in Yes Please. What do we do when everybody's got a damn Zoom class, right? You're learning how to dab with Granny. You're learning how to dress up your dogs in cute costumes. You're learning how to meditate, maybe in costume. What we are experiencing now, and Ozzy hinted at this, is content shock. Everybody is feeling burnt out about Zoom. And if you're not, that's okay too. you're an extreme introvert, and that's just fine. But understand that everybody has a Zoom class and everybody is feeling this content shock. There's no end of really, really good content out there. And we are seeing over and over again, businesses who are, taking their first steps out into the Zoom world and kind of stutter stepping into it. And that's okay. The trick is that there is a lot of really good content made by a lot of people who have done it before and been there for a long time. So if you're bringing something into the Zoom space, you have to really understand that there are some considerations around community, and you have to honor the community that you are part of. It's not a land grab right now. You are serving the community in the way that is important. And why is this even a thing that we're talking about? Well, it's because the thing that is happening right now is very weird. Everything is weird right now. 2020 is a dumpster fire. Things are not going anywhere near what people are planning on. And I think it's really telling that the moment that we have crisis, our first instinct is to connect in some way. And so Zoom was a natural extension of that. But it's not enough to just put things on Zoom in terms of a marketing perspective for your business. We have to be considerate of what is happening in customers' minds. And the thing that is most striking to me right now is that there's a dichotomy between the folks who are, Zazie mentioned that, there's less fear out there, that people are trying to get together and stay 6 feet apart and whatever else, but they're doing it in person. And the other side of the equation is the folks that look at those emails that say, hey, great news, we're open, and have a sense of anxiety and dread and worry about that second wave that's coming. And Denver Comic Con, or Denver Pop Culture Con, was just canceled because Denver is making the long-term bet that the convention center's facilities will be needed. And so they can't have that date in November that they secured. They can't use it because the city of Denver has said the convention center may still be necessary in order to offset the increase in our hospital usage. So what are your customers feeling right now? Well, there's a catastrophic loss of identity. The first, second, and third places are gone. So their first place is their home. In some cases, in extreme cases, this is not a safe place for people to be. And a second place is like a workplace, an office place. And a lot of people, if they were able to, were staying home. And in some cases, they were working on the front lines. And so it looked a lot different. They didn't have the interactions they could have had before. They couldn't interact with their customers in the same way. There was a lot of really weird, weighty decisions that had to be made. And if you need a good guidebook for what that looked like, the Kroger company, King Soopers, put out an entire handbook called The Blueprint for Business on exactly what they did for COVID and how they did it and why and what timeline was and how it looked and how it worked. The third place is crucial to identity, which is a place that's not your home and not your work, which is your coffee shop or your game store or your comic book store or your, the place that you go that is not, anything having to do with any other part of your identity but fun. And so if you lose work and you lose fun and you lose home sometimes, or home is more stressful than it would be otherwise because everybody's there all at once, all at the same time, then you have this catastrophic loss of identity. And so what that equates to is you need a way to connect with people in a way that doesn't interact with, weird cultural norms. You need a way to, go through Zoom and connect with your community. And that's why these, half crappy Zoom calls will still work right now, but you need to have an eye for the long term. What does it look like to sustain that community? The second
Nick,
thing,
because I know you, I'm going to interrupt and say you've hit 6 minutes. So
okay. I will speed through this next section, which is your customers are feeling a loss of trust and a loss of control. And because of that, everything about what is happening right now is causing additional anxiety. So in order to offset that, you need to set the scene. What are the expectations? What are the rules? That would be my Google timer going off. What are the rules? What does it look like when they come into your business? Be a guide, walk your customers through it and provide options for those who opt out of that. One of the garden centers here in Fort Collins doesn't offer curbside pickup, so I don't shop there. The other garden center does, and so I shop there instead. Home Depot asks me to go in and verify a cut of lumber with my own eyes. I'm not going in that store. I don't care what they say. I don't care what the distancing looks like. I'm not going in there. They don't have sidewalks. I don't think they believe in safety. It's okay. Have grace, right? Not everybody will get it right. Not everybody will feel the same way, and arrange for a point person to deal with those issues, sort of like a lightning rod of hate. You want somebody who can deal with somebody who's coming in anxious into your space, who, you know, just had somebody a little bit too close to them and needs to vent to somebody. Prep your people for that. That is, you know, a good marketing touch, because right now it is really critical. And as I was saying, do you only exist online if you can only exist online? Do you still exist if you can only exist in Zoom? Are these things that your business can sustain? And if not, then what do you need to do in modifying your personal services in order to continue existing? And as we talked about, without that third place, there's a real loss of connection. And it makes you wonder if your business needs to structurally change, or if your community is strong enough to withstand some of the rigors that are coming at it. And I believe that this is more than just a marketing consideration. It goes to, as Ozzy and Adam were saying, it's really a systems question and a processes question. So I will leave you with this idea from Kevin Hart. And he says, if it happened in my life or an experience in my particular journey, I'm going to talk about it. And so really the key here is to just be human, ruthlessly eliminate ambiguity. And so anything that you have that provides ambiguity creates anxiety, and it's multiplied in times of crisis. Everyday decisions that were normally fun become really weighty and really distracting and really potentially dangerous. Things like inviting a plumber into your home. Okay, is he going to wear a mask? Does he have PPE? Does he stay 6 feet apart? Is this, you know, am I going to have to test myself in 2 weeks? All of these different things that come into mind. And then provide pathways to identity. It doesn't have to be perfect right now, but you do have to try, and you have to honor that community that you've grown. And if you don't, then they're going to leave you behind for somebody who does it better. So that's all I got.
Great. So Nick, what feedback are you looking for specifically on this presentation and information that you're putting out there?
You know, honestly, I think that my goal here today is just to sort of bring up the awareness of that catastrophic loss of identity and the idea of keeping consistent while you have a crisis in communication, because there is everybody and their mom is doing a Zoom class, and then everybody and their mom is also sending out the congrats, we're open, great news, whatever. And then they don't disambiguate what does the process look like. And so it creates this split in their consumer base where they're not going to have folks be able to come back to their store because they're concerned for their health, or they're concerned for what the process looks like, or they have anxiety because a question hasn't been answered. And then they're going to tie up your phone lines, and they're going to tie up your customer service, or they're going to send emails, or they're going to send out Facebook messages. And if you're not there and ready to show up for those things, it's going to trounce you. So I think that that's the awareness piece that needs to happen right now, especially as businesses work to open up. And there's this pressure to open up. I think that there is a lot of considerations that small businesses haven't put into their processes with communications that they need to be aware of right now before they even start sending those emails. That disambiguation will save you so much time, and it'll save you so much stress, and you'll save your customers a ton of stress too.
Great. If I could have you stop screen sharing for us.
Yes.
And bring everybody back. So thoughts or commentary on what Nick's put in front of us for today? We've got 4 or 5 minutes here.
Also, thank you for letting me go over my time. I realize that that's sort of an asshat thing to do on a Zoom, but I'm glad that I was able to do it.
I forgot how to raise my hand, so this is it. I'm raising my hand.
Go for it, Janelle.
Nick, that was so awesome. I think you talked a lot of people off the ledge. And for someone who hates to put together slide decks, that's one of the best slide decks I've ever seen in my life. I took pictures of it, and I'm, going to maybe ruthlessly post it on my social media with credits to you.
Permission granted.
I think that you could maybe, I'm thinking right off the bat, I've been doing, I had a client that we put on BizWest. They did a podcast on, it was IRAs, so it was MLS changes. I think that you and Jana particularly could team up and do an awesome podcast for BizWest. That audience really needs to hear your psychology. And for someone that was scratching and clawing to get into this Zoom call because of reasons I won't go into, I just identified with it so much, and just the psychology and how I'm feeling and how our clients are feeling and all the 9 yards. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you're interested in trying to get this shop with BizWest, I'm sure happy to help you.
What do you say, Jana? Team up again? Wonder
Good
Twins?
Lord. Can the world handle that?
Can BizWest handle it? But their audience needs it. So.
All right. Thank you, Janelle. Jim.
Oh, I just want to echo all Janelle said, that this was a terrific presentation and terrific deck. One of the things for me, though, is you really well laid out what the problem was in really an insightful and valuable way. And what I wanted to see a little bit more of was clarity of how to use Zoom now, how to transcend some of those things. Just a little bit of specificness and clarity on that side, because you're bringing value to people just with your talk. And how do you do that? Everybody needs it.
Yeah, and Zoom is such a tricky beast that making it fun for everybody on the long haul is going to be tricky. The places that I look to are the gyms and the classes that were transitioning really well. In particular, the ones that are aimed at kids. So how do you keep a kid glued to Zoom? That's really the folks that have the magic sauce right now. I think length is an important discussion. How do you keep a Zoom call interesting for a long haul? I don't think you do. I think that people need to stand up and move around. I think there has to be some sort of interactive component. My Taekwondo school started playing games with toilet paper, and it was a sneaky way of seeing who was low on toilet paper. And then if somebody had said, I don't have any toilet paper, we don't have any, they would send them a pack from the school. And so it was just like this, yeah, go us. It was a great moment, and something that I had nothing to do with, but I thought it was a really cool thing to see happen in the community, even just from a community standpoint, and from Zoom enabling that because of all this catastrophic crap that is occurring. It's so heartening to see the community activate in those ways. So I think that Zoom being fun is a tricky beast no matter what you're going to do. Making your presentation funny, maybe introducing elements of humor, having brief moments of levity where you can move around and do something. I usually like to, when I'm in person, last time I think I was at 1 Million Cups, I had everybody stand up and stretch before my presentation. So there's a lot of different things that you can incorporate. Interdisciplinary action right now, doing yoga or a meditation at the very beginning, breath work or other things like that you can do at the very beginning is so important, and integrating that throughout is going to be a really fun thing that you can do to leverage some more things into your business presentations.
Mm-hmm. I know personally in our own conversations within my team and organization, we've been looking at the fact that webinars are definitely on the downtrend at this point, as everybody has been to far too many of them in the last couple of months. And so what is the next rising curve? We're starting to see that to be live Q&As and certain other things that are coming out. I want to get to Ozzy as our last comment here, and then we will move into our wins section for the rest of our time together. So Ozzy?
It's just a quick comment, because we had the really great presentations today. And it occurs to me that, this is for small businesses, and we get together and entrepreneurs and people studying businesses. But as someone who does a great deal of work with big companies, I think executives in big companies could really benefit from some of these presentations and from engaging with small business and entrepreneurs and people who are struggling to create a business. And I have not been able to find a good middle ground or channel to bring these two communities together. Let's face it, we would benefit greatly if we could talk to these guys and tell them what we could do for them, for their companies and so on. But then I think they would also benefit a great deal, even if they were listening to Nick just now or to the previous presentation. I think there's stuff there that those executives and senior managers could really benefit from, and it'd be worth for them to listen to. So just my 5 seconds worth. I don't know that there's a channel out there, but Boy, I wish there was.
Great. Thank you, Ozzy, and thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Grateful to have your presence here. I know how painful slide decks are for you, but I appreciate you working to conform to the 1 million format as much as you possibly can. So the last part of what we do up here, for those of you from Boulder and Denver in our weekly 1 million cups meetings here in Fort Collins, is that we have the community get together and talk about 3 things. So who had a win this week? Who has some help that they potentially need moving forward, or who has found a resource or piece of information that all of us should know about. So kicking that off, would love to hear who's got wins this week, who's had a good week in one capacity or another. Jen, let's start with you.
Yeah, I have been doing live fitness with Fidos these last few months, and I actually had a friend refer me to Denver Voyager magazine for an interview. And then I recently had a CSU student contact me to interview me for, I think, the CSU news thing. But that was very exciting. It was very cool. And it's been a neat experience. I've learned a lot.
Fantastic. We always like it to see folks in the news. Who else has had good news this week? Oh, come on, y'all. It can't be that dull and boring out there.
There was a water leak in my house, and after I had the plumber out, which was a terrifying thing, I patched the wall myself, and it actually looks really good. So that was my win. There's no business win, but it's that I did. So that was good.
Plaster and paint. Excellent. We love it. Katrina, how about you?
I'm just going to throw out there that I used a car broker for the first time and finally got a new car after 6 months of not having a working vehicle that was mine. So I got a new black Jeep Wrangler. I'm really excited about it. And if you've never used a car broker, they're actually super awesome. Just as a business tip, I'd never used one before. He's pretty awesome.
These are good things to know. Also, at some point, I need a ride in a Jeep with the top off.
Yes,
has been
absolutely.
Far too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Far too long. Harrison, what have you got for us today?
Well, I think my card deck is up now. I think it actually went up for sale. Chris can probably confirm or deny this, but I think it was supposed to be live yesterday.
It is live. It is for sale. Yes.
And has had sales already within an hour. So
that's
awesome.
Great.
For those of you who are not regulars and familiar, Mike and Chris run a company called Color Pocket, which is a portable coloring system. Harrison is an artist who has designed a coloring deck for that system. It went live yesterday. I took a look at it. It looks great, Harrison. Very
beautiful.
Excited. So, what have you got for us?
Well, if patching walls can count as a win, I spent about 13 hours this past week bringing mulch from the front yard to my backyard, which is a sloped hill filled with boulders. And so I did that. I am hoping that the weeds will be killed. And I just feel so virtuous. So
you feel virtuous. And
yes.
Is your back okay? Yard work always leaves me with back pain. I don't know. I think it's a psychological issue because I simply just don't like yard work.
My muscles are not happy, but you know, it's done.
Excellent. All right, Will, what have you got to share with us today?
Yeah. So my company Zentainer came 5th in Pitch NoCO, and we started cashing in our prize this week, which was some consulting time with Mary Merritt over at Nerdy Mind, and that's been absolutely stellar. She's been super great to work with and gives us really great feedback, and so it was really just a week of learning that came out of that. It was a 2-hour phone call, so here.
I think Matt put in the chat, and I will second, Mary is amazing, and to the point I made earlier to Adam, she has been an entrepreneur in this community for 10 years now and came through and is the epitome of the kind of person who gives back to young companies to make sure that they are as successful as she has been. So that's been awesome. Jenny, what updates do you have for us?
So I had to disappear because I have a lot of construction going on at my house, which is also very exciting stuff. But as far as business, my online course is done. I finished it last night, and it will be launching June 8th, so next Monday. And I've been lucky enough to work with MAPR, who's helping me with marketing and social media, and we're having a lot of fun. And I'm also working with a group of SAGE advisors, of which Natalie is one. So lots of fun things going on. I'm hoping that once the landscaping stuff gets done, I can just sit in my hammock with a beer. So we'll see when that happens.
Sort of lugging, sort of patching your wall or lugging your mulch.
Yes, well, there are other people doing most of this work. It's they're putting holes in my house right now.
Oh, fun. Well, I will tell you, it has been an absolute delight to see your face show up in the BizWest daily newsletters in the advertising section there.
Yes.
So that's been great. Appreciate that moving forward.
That's
Will,
all
one last thing from you. You gotta unmute, dude.
Yes.
There you go.
I also just wanted to call out that I talked with Mike Bennett this last week about our finances and doing some forecasting, who's actually on this call and was stellar to work with as well.
Mike is my go-to of when the finances get too complicated for me to start advising startups. I send them all to Mike. So absolutely grateful for all of those things.
One last comment. I have to say working with Jenny is just awesome. It's like our whole team is in rapture with hearing, because we sell words, and hearing her philosophy about words, but it also makes me really nervous about writing to her, because it's like, have I done everything correct on my email? But working with Jenny is awesome. So thank you. I love this group for connecting us.
Great. Well, I love that everybody's doing well, and we've had good stories today. In fact, there's even Klingon in the group chat if you haven't looked at that. But we are right at time. So thank you again to Adam and Nick for your presentations. We will be back here, same bat time, same bat channel next week with 2 new presentations, and glad to see the folks from Denver and Boulder. You're welcome to join us anytime. Go forth, have a great week, guys, and we will see you next week.
Great group, Jana.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you coming.
Yeah, enjoyed it.